News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Allan Gilbreth with darkoakmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian. I don't really have anything for today, but I'm looking forward to finally seeing Joe angry.
Okay. Interesting little tease there, Max. Well, if you're interested, you can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And, of course, we invite you to go to Tool Talk Radio on Facebook. Check out the action over there. Follow us, of course. Send us your messages. We've got some of our listeners that like to send us things over there. I'm thinking of Robbie and some others, Allan. So interact and join the Tool Talk Radio family. Well, Max, put a pin in that because you're going to get your wish in a minute here. But, Allan, in great moments in building history today, this is interesting. I'm almost calling this the good, the bad, and the ugly of one of the biggest building projects in American history, the Hoover Dam.
There are a lot of legends.
Pretty big monumental achievement, but also a story of unintended consequences that we're gonna, and we dive into both. There's a lot of fallout, and who would imagine that there's a connection between the Hoover Dam and the Bermuda Triangle?
There is actually a big connection.
How do you like that, Max? That's something to think about, isn't it? So.
I'm just like the idea of playing the conspiracy theory button.
Okay, Allan, this is an 8-year anniversary of a pivotal moment in my life, and it involves battle wounds. I was given a permanent scar. Well, actually, I think I got about 3 permanent scars, and I want to say it was 8 years ago almost to the day that this happened, and so I might unpack that story. Okay. Well, I guess I have to. I've already teased it.
You done talked about it, so.
A few weeks ago, when you and Max were on the when I wasn't here during the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention,
unsupervised.
I noticed how the conversation always somehow segues into talking about toilets and things like that.
It was in your honor.
Well, there was a pretty big gap in the conversation that I wanted to fill in, and it's more or less about avoiding tragedy with toilet clogs, and we're gonna.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, so I think we need to round out that conversation.
Oh,
okay. Allan's week in review. You had some interesting action happen, right?
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear about this. I'm just going to
leave it at that. We're going to leave it at yeah.
There's a certain energy. Sometimes when bad things happen, it fuels the show. We'll see. Today may be one of our best.
We're going to be a little fired up today, folks.
We have our must-have item of the week. We've got other things. And, of course, like we say, we would love to hear from you. So get in touch at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline. Call or text us at 901-683-0989. Well, Allan, what Max is referring to, we were talking before the show, and okay, Matt, have you guys ever seen me get mad? I mean,
I've seen you a little miffed on occasion.
One thing I'm noted for, and I'm sort of happy about, is that I'm pretty even-tempered. I really almost never get mad. I might get annoyed, I might get irritated or something, but last night, Allan, I had an experience that really, it was one of the most infuriating experiences I've ever had. But I will say, I'm going to use that to create a new segment for the show that I think will be useful in the world of home improvement. Go ahead.
To quote Palpatine, use your aggressive feelings, boy.
All right, so I want to ask you guys about this. And the word of the day here, Max, is etiquette. So I'm at the ATM drive up last night, Allan. So it's a Friday night. And, I, like many people, as a contractor, I get paid on Fridays because I always collect a payment on Fridays. And I know most people get paid and they want to, either cash their check or deposit it. Well, The way my bank is, the bank's not open on Saturday. So I better, if I'm not in there by Friday, I've got, I'm not going to get any banking done until Monday. And but we have these nifty the ATMs now have these interactive features where you can talk to a teller, and they might be stationed in Tupelo or Georgia or something, but they still help you at that. And that's open till 6:00, right? So I was doing a type of transaction where I had to talk to a teller basically. So I pull up. and there's 4 cars in front of me. It's 5:25. I mean, it's 5:33. I'm like, okay, I got 27 minutes. Surely
I got this.
I got this, right? Okay, so there's the car that is at the drive up. There's a driver up there, and he's doing his banking transaction. All of a sudden, he gets out of the car. I'm like, okay, what is this all about? The passenger comes around after he's done with his transaction. The passenger comes up and gets in front of the monitor and is doing his transaction. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess this guy, whatever.
All
So
right,
he's
come
doing
on,
his
come
thing.
on.
And so in the meantime, this other guy goes and talks to the truck behind them. I guess they're friends. And I'm like, they acted like this was some big party. And I'm sitting there looking at the clock. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I still have time here. Okay, Allan, I'm not going to bore you with the entire thing. At the end of this thing, 3 guys got out of the first car.
Oh, my
then
gosh.
4 guys got out of the truck. And I'm looking at this clock, and I was thinking, if there was one of those Karens in the cars in front of me, this thing would have wound up on the 9:00 news or something. It was getting, and then I'm looking, now I'm down to literally minutes. I basically every time you thought it was over, a new guy would get out of the car and everything. So anyway, the long and short of it was 7 guys got all their banking done in those 2 cars. I pulled up with literally about 90 seconds to spare because, once it hits 6, they're done.
Yeah, that satellite says goodbye.
And I needed that money, and I was fuming. I was so mad, and I had an emotional reaction, and I was like, okay, I'm sure the chemical imbalance happened to me, and I was thinking about it, Allan. I was like, okay, now if those guys. Part of what bugged me more than anything is they seemed to be having a party. They didn't seem to care about the inconvenience they were causing all of us behind them. And I was thinking, okay, well, if they had lined up, like maybe they pull their car over and they line up because they can't, do their banking at the window. And we pull up. I'm like, okay, well, there's a line. At least maybe I have time to go drive to another wing, or at least I would say to myself, well, shoot, I shouldn't have waited so long to get here. I wouldn't have blamed them. I would have blamed myself.
So I'm seeing something darker, more sinister from your childhood.
Talk to me.
Were you ever actually traumatized by the 47 clowns coming out of the little bitty car?
That's what it felt like. It was like the clown car. I'm like...
All you needed was some music.
I'm just reminded of this meme that the quote from this meme that I like. It's like, your anguish, it sustains me.
It was awful. And it was like, because you didn't know when it was over. Every time you thought it was over.
That was what killed you. It's the uncertainty.
It's like when your power goes out and you don't know if the power's coming back on in an hour or 5 days. It's that uncertainty. And I'm sitting there watching the clock tick away, and I needed to get that money too and everything. And so the fact that I made it with literally about a minute and a half to spare,
but any landing you can walk away from is a good landing.
Yeah, but I was feeling it all night, like, because I really do think, I'm sure you could tell me the scientific reasons of what happens to your body when it releases all those whatever.
When you actually go into fight and flight,
that's what I was just thinking.
Oh yeah, your body totally reacts. You are flooded with all kinds of, as we put it, enes.
Yeah.
The epinephrine, the adrenaline, all of these things that are preparing you
Endorphins?
to go whoop. Well, the endorphins kick in towards the end because you're going to need painkiller after whooping the 7 guys that were just in front of you.
It really made me understand road rage and things like that. Well, I'm like, you get cut off in traffic and suddenly you get this adrenaline and,
And if the people that are did this the other day are listening, please text us.
Well, that's the reason. It's funny you mentioned that, Max, because they looked like contractors. I hate to say it. They looked like they came from the job site. And
they all piled in a couple of cars and they ran down to the bank.
I understand their situation. I'm saying it could have been handled better, because if they were to manage our expectations, like, look, it's not just 2 cars. We've got 7 guys here, so be ready.
I'm going to flip the script on you and say, if there had been 14 cars lined up, it would have been far less efficient, because this guy would have had to wrap up, restart his vehicle, pull his vehicle off. The next guy would have had to pull up. you would have never made it if it had been cars.
Okay, but Allan, if I pull up and there's 9 cars there, I'm going to go, okay, I might have to head to that other branch or something. Or I would at least be blaming myself, like, well, I waited too long. I wouldn't be blaming these guys for the emotional trauma. But
the emotional trauma is just the uncertainty, because it was like playing whack-a-mole.
Right.
Because another mole kept popping up. Every time you thought, okay, we're done, and I'm pulling forward, doink, here comes another guy out of the side of the truck. And you're like, how many people are in this vehicle?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what it occurred to me, and one thing I will say for you and I, Allan, we take our tragedy in life or our bad life experiences, and we somehow find a way to twist it and promote Tool Talk. And so I came up with a new segment out of this after I calmed down, and we're going to call this Job Site Etiquette. There we go. Because Allan, you and I, we work on the job. People work, and people have home improvement projects. There's things like that, and I'm going to use this. Etiquette is the word, because it's funny. There's etiquette in almost everything. When I lived in San Diego, there was surfing etiquette.
Yes.
If you go to the beach, like when I first was trying to learn how to surf, I learned real early, you don't take somebody's wave. You don't paddle out in a certain way, and if you do, you're going to hear about it. It's like there's golf etiquette. There's calling shotgun in the car etiquette, why not have job site etiquette? So,
like, look before you back up.
Yeah. So I'm taking this, and this I think this holds true for any home improvement project, whether you're a contractor or whether you're doing it yourself. And Allan, I'm going to start. I've got a list. I know you've got this one triggered you, but I'm taking this all the way to the beginning when you go to the big box store to pick up your supplies. Here's a little thing that I try to do every time I go. So, because I've had more flat tires than anybody, because I'm literally in a big box store every day. I mean, just about every morning I go to the big box store. So when I'm walking into the parking lot, when I'm parking and I walk through the parking lot, if I see a nail or a screw or something, I pick them up and I throw them out. It takes 2 seconds. It's like, sometimes you'll see a box of them, and it's like, but think of how many, you're saving somebody a flat tire or whatever, because that's an easy thing to do, but it's just a nice human decency type thing to do.
Now, what if you're seeking vengeance upon the person who's parked behind the nails?
Well, I don't know. See, Max has to go to but that's a simple thing. But honestly, how many people walk past things that are in the park now? And to a degree, sometimes I'll pick up litter, but once in a while, there's something that's laying in the parking lot, and I'm like, I don't even know what kind of germs or what kind of whatever is on this. So if it's something really nasty looking, sometimes I don't necessarily pick it up. But a screw or nail, I think, is just a decent thing to do.
I'm going to agree with that, because the tire you save is probably your own.
Yeah, at some point it's going to come back. It's like Spider-Man. He should have saved that robber. His Uncle Ben wouldn't have got shot. But I had one more thing to do with that, and then we'll we can all chime in. Okay, so when I go in the big box store, you've seen this, Allan, especially like if you go to, like, I don't know, the plywood aisle or the 2x4s or something.
Right.
How often have you gone into to the aisle, and maybe there's that one piece of plywood that's sticking out, and it's either down below a perfect place to trip over,
knee height or eye height,
where somebody may walk into it and take their eye out.
I always shove
those
back.
in.
I always push that back. Yeah.
But how often do we walk? It's easy to just go, walk around it. But think about it. Somebody could easily, especially a little kid, they could whack their head on it. So that's a simple thing to do at the store. I've got some ones on the job site, but Allan, I think you had a couple too, didn't you?
Well, I'm going to go pick on look before you back up.
Funny you should mention that.
And I'm going to give a huge shout out to my comedian buddy Scott J. Carroll, who thought he had his car parked safely. He actually had it like back up around and behind the corner away from.
Wait, are you talking about when he had his house being worked on?
Yeah. Having a house worked on, and the gentleman with the very, very large truck somehow did not see the small German-built vehicle, and to say that he backed into it is insufficient. Ran over it.
Right.
Oh my gosh. What a mess. What a mess. So
is he just negligent? Was he on his phone? Was he? I don't know.
He didn't. Well, again, please understand the vehicle you're driving. And this isn't just for those of us in the business. If you own a vehicle that came with a zip code,
Right.
you need to know how to drive this beast. You're not moving a car. It's a boat.
Or these dualies where they stick out extra for us.
It's going to act like a boat. It's going to drive like a boat. It's going to, and for those of you listening around the world, if you're in Europe, in Memphis, we have one of your streets that we'd like to give back to you. It's called Poplar Avenue. Back in the, I suspect, and I don't know this.
Who's
for a
the
fact,
evil person that designed
but,
Poplar Avenue?
It was never designed to be 3 lanes on each side because it is the tightest. Now, my truck, I don't have a giant truck. I have a midsize.
Right.
And I pretty much take up a lane in Poplar, stem to stern.
Sure.
All the way across. So you got these gigantic Suburbans and these monstrous SUVs. And honestly, like the mirrors are hanging outside of the lanes.
We all know what you're
snug. This is snug. Be aware of what your vehicle is going to do, how big your vehicle is, and basically the catastrophe that it can cause when you don't look.
You know, I wasn't even thinking of this because basically what I'm doing is I'm walking people through the project phase. Okay, you go shopping, you get to the shop. Now that you're saying this, now that I'm thinking of this, I've been on job sites where I would say be courteous about the way you park. If you've got the big dually with a trailer or whatever, don't
leave it in the middle,
or don't put it where we can't get around you, or block us in, or some. You know, everybody should park according. Like if I'm on a job site, I almost always just park in the street. I don't take it upon myself to just park in somebody's driveway unless they give me permission. Once in a while, like if I have a lot of supplies and the garage is way in the back, I might pull up, unload, and then I park in the street. Parking etiquette is a part of a job site.
It's a huge bit of it. So
the
other thing I'm going to throw in with vehicles is be aware of what you're driving over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Allan's really triggered with the driving part today.
I am so triggered about driving. Trust me. Okay. If you're my insurance agent listening, I sent you pictures.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
Right.
See, David, you got a shout out.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is be aware of what the route is to bring in and drop stuff off. This happens constantly, job site after job site.
Mm-hmm.
Proper instructions are not given to or are ignored by vendors, delivery drivers, and some of us pulling into the job site, and we might be hauling trailers, we might be hauling supplies. If we got to bring stuff in, we need to know what route do you want us to take, especially in a larger job.
We actually got a contribution on the text line from Robbie. Robbie says, Robbie says, clean up the mess that you created so other trades don't have to.
Yes.
That's on my list, Rob. Basically I had clean up your mess at the end of the day. That's exact. Well, I had another one, Allan, because this one if you're on a job site, you know the feeling you get when this one. I went to lunch and I came back and these other guys, I don't remember, they were sheetrock guys or something, and they were using my ladder and my drill. And it's like you may as well have kidnapped one of my kids or something. I was like,
you don't touch
another person's
tool. It was your drill.
Right. Well, the ladder, okay, and then I want to even say that they got some sheetrock mud on it. And okay, this isn't like a squeaky clean ladder, but you don't touch another person's tools.
Don't touch their toys.
At all. I'm like, and then one other that's a real one for me. Have you ever been on a job site where somebody comes in and there might be 4 or 5 trades on the job, and they just bring their own radio and they're blasting whatever music they want to play on the whole job site. It's like, don't impose your musical tastes on me. You know what I mean? You ever been on that job? That just irritates me.
Well,
that's what headphones are for.
Having a truck loaded up like the Joker starter kit, I have a variety of magnets.
Yeah. Oh.
That can accidentally wind up someplace that maybe I didn't appreciate.
Right.
And, I don't have to listen to your music.
Another one here. Gosh, we could make the whole show about this. Communicate with other contractors. Don't just show up that morning and go, oh, by the way, I got to cut a hole in this wall that you just repaired. and I got to reroute some pipes and stuff.
Oh,
You know, let them know that and also because, you know, contractors have to plan and schedule things. And if you don't communicate with the other guys, you might be costing somebody a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you show up with your crew and you can't work that day because some other guy did his whatever. Boy, I'm getting mad again, Alan.
Yeah, getting all worked up, man. Well, you know, welcome to the biggest thing here is be aware.
Right.
And this goes, all right, let's bring it all the way back down to your DIY. Your significant other and the kids are going to do a project.
Right.
Honestly, a little bit of planning and a little bit of communication can make an impossible job absolutely a pleasure to get done.
Right. And you might get, you know, when you communicate with other contractors, when everybody in the project, you might get some help out of it too. They may do a little.
Somebody may go, hey, let me tell you this shortcut I know.
Right. So okay. I think we'll. Anyway,
are we good?
I think we've got an ongoing segment here, Alan.
All right.
We're going to come back to this in the future. But Alan, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back here on Tool Talk Radio, it's going to be Alan's Week in Review.
Oh boy, here we go.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
This is what the holidays are all about. Three buddies sitting around chewing gum, huh?
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
I mean, that's what we're going to be doing Christmas night, right?
Absolutely. What are you and I going to sit around and share hair tips?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite ones, Max. Good job. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, and the ever-surprising Max, always keeping us on our toes with those interesting rejoiners.
Hey, gotta keep it festive.
You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And we invite you to go to Tool Talk Radio on Facebook and check out the action over there. If you can't wait to see what our must-have item of the week is, you can go look at it now. Mm-hmm. It is riveting stuff.
It's not a riveter, is it?
No, I don't know.
Not this week.
One day we'll bring one of those in. So, Allan, in a minute, we've got to get to your week in review. But before we get to that, let's talk about, what have we been doing? We talk about job site etiquette. We've been talking about behaving correctly when you're doing a home improvement project.
I know a company that does an amazing job of that.
I mean, you talk about somebody that sets a standard for job site etiquette. It's our good buddies at Brown Refrigeration. Larry Brown, you talk about a business culture. His guys would never show up and blare their music on a job site.
No.
What?
That makes me think of a quote from Pirates of the Caribbean with Captain Barbossa. He's like, "Don't impugn on me honor, boy."
Yeah, you don't impute on Larry Brown's honor.
His people are amazing,
top notch, and then of course skilled technicians. And it's funny, I've told you this every time Larry comes on lately, because I've done research, and I like to think I'm a pretty, I understand mechanics and I understand how things work. I still the function of a HVAC system is still a mystery to me. I look at it and I'm like, how does somebody even design this, and then let alone work on it? And it is a fascinating system. So you need somebody that really understands that they're qualified, that they are going to be there for the long haul. Because the other thing is HVAC technology is constantly evolving. One of the and clean air technology, as we've seen. There's so many revolutions that happen in these technologies, and Brown Refrigeration has been through them all. He's been at this for over 40 years. This is what he lives and breathes, and he's cultivated a great business culture over there. And like we say, when you have a HVAC technician, it is not unlike having your auto mechanic. You need your unit needs maintenance. It may not have to just replace something. Maybe you just need to keep it tuned up. You need to have your vents and your ductwork cleaned out. So you want a relationship with a company you can trust, and there's nobody better than Brown Refrigeration. So you can call them directly at 901-362-1881. You can go to brownref.com, and we also would suggest going to their Facebook page, Brown Refrigeration in Memphis. So, all right, Allan, let's hear what you have to say.
Oh,
Allan's Week in Review.
I noticed that the levels on the mic were clipping, so that's good.
You probably blew somebody's eardrums out, Max. So if you're new to Tool Talk Radio, full disclosure, I am a carpenter. I deal in wood. I deal with very pleasant jobs generally, Allan. I just like to make things out of wood.
You get to work outside.
Very little drama. People are usually pretty nice, and But you, Allan, are in the trenches.
Director.
You deal with the most random work. You are dealing with state regulations. You're dealing with. You never know what Allan's going to be working on. And we're like, we want to mine this territory. So, we never know what's going to happen with Allan's Week in Review. So, what did you do this week, Allan?
We're gonna start with the words. Read the specs.
Real men don't read the instructions, Allan. But
read the specs.
Okay.
If the architect gave you a design, at least pretend you looked at it. At least pretend you know where it is. Because here's the dirty little secret about building stuff.
Yeah.
In your world, Joe, things are level.
Or I make them level.
Right.
Yeah.
In your world, the deck is level.
I got you.
Or the landing has a certain slope to meet a certain need.
Right.
In my world, very few things are level. Like pipes.
Oh,
that things have to flow through.
A pipe needs to have a slight angle so the water can go downhill.
Like a gutter needs to have a slight angle. Or people don't understand that a lot of what is inside your walls isn't straight.
Yeah.
And it isn't straight for a reason.
Right.
So when you do a job and you bring me in and you show me how beautiful all of these wonderful 90-degree angles are and all of these beautiful straight pipes before the plumbing inspector gets there.
Yeah.
And the plumbing inspector is going to be there in 20 minutes.
Right.
And you're like, hey, Allan, look what we did. and suddenly I'm Snidely Whiplash.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I'm the one looking at you go, you're going to tear every bit of this out.
Right. They're all proud of themselves.
No,
they
we're not. It's perfect. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's straight. And I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to sit right over here and laugh because I told you clowns.
Right.
You can't do that. But it looks good. It doesn't matter if it looks good. And these are all things I've actually been told on job sites this week.
Okay.
No, but it looks fabulous. It doesn't matter how it looks. It's got to have a grade, or it has to be within 6 inches of the sink.
Right. Not
4 feet down the wall. Or it has to, oh my gosh. And
that's especially true with plumbing. I mean, right. And water lines got to be in the center of the stud.
I'm not just going to pick on plumbing.
Like
oh, no, I'm not just going to pick on plumbing.
Okay.
We're going to pick on low voltage. We're going to pick on a window unit air conditioner.
Ah.
My favorite one. A friend of mine is a very old, well, kind of like your house, an older house.
Yeah.
And it was never designed for central air. Never had it.
It wasn't even invented then.
Right, right. So I got called over, and of course, we live in the Mid-South, which, for again, those of you around the world, picture a city that is bipolar, because we don't know if it's spring or fall, and it can change from morning to evening.
I was in a T-shirt yesterday, Allan, outside in December. Right.
Yeah. So the window unit was ancient. And so they had gone and they had looked at the little stand that had been built many years ago, and went, we can clean this up. And so they got out there and got all busy, and then they were really, really upset this week because somebody got their feet wet. And I walked in and they're like, oh my God, we have a leak in the pipe. Something's burst in the wall. What has happened? And I went, wow, new window unit, huh?
Yeah.
As I'm looking at it, and first words out of the mouth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we got it installed and it is perfectly on bubble.
I knew you were going to say that because okay. Folks, if you're wondering, because some people still have window units, because you might
quite a few.
You might have to maybe you have an upstairs room that doesn't get quite cool enough. If you don't put a slight tip where it's tipping outside, like where the water, because water
is going to go downhill.
And Allan, you pointed something out to me I'll be honest, I didn't know this because I didn't understand air conditioning, but probably 15 years ago or something. I don't know. Whenever I first met you or whatever, we were looking at our window unit that we had, and you were pointing out, no, it's good that it has this level of water in it. Like, it's designed to circulate. And you might not like the sound of that little water in the bottom of the tray, but it's meant to be there.
Yeah.
But it has to tip out. You don't want it tipping into your living room.
Well, this was installed beautifully. They had redone everything. It was painted. It was gorgeous. And it was absolutely, and they were proud. I mean, they got that level. They got that baby perfect. and when we say perfectly flat, a lot of people will use the phrase on bubble.
Yeah.
And when
that's an interesting term. I never used that.
Well, it's very funny because when you look at the instructions, it tells you clearly that it needs to be an X percentage grade or a quarter bubble.
Okay.
Which means you want the bubble in the far quarter of the little thing that says it's almost level.
If I was just doing the math in my head, a quarter bubble seems to me like about a 5-degree angle.
Yeah,
is that
somewhere less than 10. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to look like the window unit is sliding out of the window. It's
gravity will figure it
enough
out.
That water will go where it wants. And because they had made it absolutely perfectly flat, the little tiny lip in the front of it is exactly this tiny millimeter less high than the lip in the back.
I'm not going to say I want to play devil's advocate, but let me just throw something at you, Allan, because I think this is where we get into trouble. So, because you're talking about I've bought window units, So, you buy it, you pull it out of the box, and it is a unit, and it's got these little things on the side that's easy to figure out. They go to
right. They're there to block the air,
and there's a plug.
Yeah.
Well, why do I need this 80-page manual to tell me that? You know what I mean? Somewhere in there, in the midst of all those instructions,
page
it says,
1,
tip it. So, I mean, I see why some people skip some of that stuff, but maybe they need to simplify the manuals because,
the worst one ever, and this is a long, long time ago when I actually sold window units. Mm-hmm. I got called to a client's house. It was a little country shack. They'd never had any form of air in this thing ever before.
Right.
And they said that this air conditioner was broke because it was heating everything up so bad they were about to die.
I knew what you were saying.
And I came in, and I had the thing sitting on the table.
So it's blowing out cold air while in the meantime
cold air is coming out one end and 900-degree air is blowing out the other end. And it's just kind of like, okay, you're going to get a free install. Here we go. So
it's called a window unit.
Yeah, bless their hearts. This was a million years ago when these things were still kind of new.
It probably was dripping water all over the table.
Well, they turned it off pretty quick because it was so hot.
Okay.
But they were all upset that it was. Now, I'm going back 40-something years for that story.
Sure.
The story today was brand new this week. You cannot install anything that creates water. Now, the other caveat to this is you really don't understand how much water an air conditioning unit makes.
Oh, yeah. Gallons, right? I mean, a day.
It is anywhere from 10 gallons of water a day up, depending upon the size of the unit.
People may be asking, Allan, why are you running an air conditioner in December? In a building like you're dealing with how many... you're dealing with medical situations where you've got room, tons of room. Well, sometimes in a building like that, you need to drop the temperature, and you might be running an air conditioner in the winter. Think of the humidity it gets in it. We've had rain the last week straight. Imagine
think
how
of
much
a commercial kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
You're producing a ton of heat, or a commercial
you got to
laundry.
cool things off.
You're making a lot of heat and a lot of moisture. And I'll just throw in an older home, you're going to be doing a lot of holiday cooking. And we are in the South. It's not necessarily freezing outside.
Right.
I mean, it could be 60, 70 degrees, and you're firing up the stove, and you're firing up the oven, and you're dripping sweat trying to work in the kitchen, so you might turn that unit on.
Okay. Well, if you work for Allan Gilbreth, read your instructions, but don't do too good of a job, or Allan's not going to have anything to talk about.
Oh, please,
the weekend review.
Please leave me bored. I would love to be bored. My last one is, it is the season, and let's talk about extension cords.
Oh boy, here we go.
Don't use them.
Yeah.
Stop.
Especially with your lights outside and everything. How are you going to plug in your...
If it is not a rated surge protector, do not use it.
It's funny, Allan, because when you go to the big box store, you're like, why is there 5 shelves of extension cords? Don't I just need to know, 25 foot, 50 foot? But that's not true. Some of them, why is that extension cord $10 and the other one that's the same length is $50? Right. Well, there's a reason.
The critical thing you need to look at is the amperage rating of anything you're plugging in.
Right.
Here we go. Basic. All right.
Well, plus some are insulated heavier. Some will say weather resistant.
They will say interior, exterior.
Right.
Some will say interior use only. The cheaper the cord, the less you want to use it.
Yeah, especially outside.
Yes,
don't do the Clark Griswold thing.
No. Well, and that's exactly why I'm mentioning this.
Right.
Of a lot of people, all right, it's really simple. Everybody goes, well, I can't figure out how many things I can plug in. It's really, really simple. There's an amp rating.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your circuit breaker, and you have a 15 amp breaker. That means it will handle up to 15 amps. So even if you don't know what an amp is, we're not going to get into electricity 101 here. But we're going to go to, now you're looking at your string of Christmas lights, and they say that they use 1 amp.
Right.
All right. That means, let's do some basic math here, people.
Yeah.
Because some of y'all can't. I don't mean to sound condescending, but some of y'all can't.
You're starting
do
to
math.
sound condescending, Allan.
Because when I find 20 of these things plugged in at 1 amp each, and you keep wondering why the breaker keeps going, you've overloaded the breaker. You cannot exceed what the rating is. So this is why I tell everybody, if you're going to do the really cool yard thing, make sure you've got an exterior rated surge protector between you and your socket, and plug your stuff into that.
Yeah.
And do a tiny little bit of math and make sure that you are correct. And if you need additional power, for some of you that are doing, now, a good buddy of mine does what I call the power Christmas house stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Where, Santa's on the roof, the airplane is coming in for a landing.
Oh, yeah.
There's elves everywhere.
800 inflatables.
Rachmaninoff is playing, and it's all blinking in time to the music. Okay, these people actually have units designed to handle the power load of this and control all of that. They put in some time and money. So, again, please do not do the Clark Griswold.
Right.
Do not have the 87 kitchen-rated little dinky power cords. You're going to catch something on fire. You're going to mess something up. You're going to blow your power box. A little prep. Spend a little extra money. Get the externally rated cords. And make sure that you're not overloading a single socket.
One other thing too, Allan, if you're outside and you've got that set up and you touch the cord on the outside and it feels like it's 150 degrees, that's probably not a good sign, right?
That's a great sign. It's a sign the fire department will be along in a little bit. I don't mean to sound brutal.
Yeah, Allan's sounding very
I gotta get
passive aggressive today. So.
There's no passive to this. As I'm checking, it's honestly, you get a friend calls you over and goes, "Hey, let's, Allan, look at what I did," and you look at him and go, "Well, let me get 911 queued up here because you're about to go foomp."
Okay. All right.
People, just behave, pay attention.
All right. Boy,
don't make me have another week like this in review.
I knew it. I knew there was going to be a certain dynamic at play here today, and I wasn't mistaken. But all right, Allan, let's calm things down because this is something it's positive. It's interesting. Well, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's something we can both agree on. So let's get to our must-have item of the week.
Oh my gosh! Yes, the storage clipboard.
Yes, I'm holding up basically. So it's posted on Facebook if you want to look at it. Everybody knows what a clipboard is. We've had those, but I've kind of stepped up my game, Allan, because when you're on a project, and this is not just for contractors. I'd say this is for anybody. Because when you're working on a project, let's suppose you're having some people remodel your kitchen, or let's just suppose you're doing a project.
Just working in the backyard.
You got this storage clipboard, which is basically a clipboard with at the bottom, it's got a little flap that holds a pen. It's thicker. It's like an inch thick. And then you open it, and it's got storage on the inside. So when you go to the big box store, you open the clipboard, you throw the receipt in there. When you want to make a sketch of a thing you're going to rough out, you put it on there, you throw it inside the clipboard, and at the end of the project, all of your paperwork is in one place, it's organized, and go for it, Allan.
And I'm going to add one thing.
Yeah.
We've already had a must-have item of the week that goes in the storage clipboard.
Okay.
Graph paper.
Boom. There you go. Exactly.
Drop the mic.
Storage and the other thing is, we've had this, Allan. I've made trips to the big box store, especially like with us remodeling our kitchen. You might be in there 2 hours because you're buying a stove, or you're configuring this, or you're brainstorming or whatever. Well, when you got your storage clipboard, you can pull out the papers, you can make a sketch, you can make a note, you can keep it all there.
There are your measurements. You don't have to remember it.
And when you get out of the car and it's pouring rain, you got all your paperwork inside this clipboard.
Your paper does not get wet.
It's cool. It's funny, but it's one of these things where it's like, okay, the difference in price between a clipboard and one of these is, it's negligible. I think it's like $7.
Yeah, it's a buck or two.
It's very minor. Now there's some that are really nice. They're like stainless steel. They're those are the ones if you're going to drop it off a 40-foot ladder and it still survives and everything. But
that's mine.
Yeah, but I'm sure you got a few of these babies, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's one of those weird things. Somebody almost has to cajole you into buying one.
Yeah.
They kind of like, it's just a clipboard. I don't need that. You got pencils, pens, graph paper, scrap paper, because somebody always needs to, I don't have a card on me. Well, I need your number.
Right.
Well, here you go. And you write it down, you put it in, and you put it in there. Because here's what happens to me. So many people talk to me during a day.
Yeah.
Things that you told me at 8:15 this morning that I swore I would remember.
Oh, yeah.
They're out of my head by 10. And it is actually relaxing to sit down at the end of the day, take your clipboard, which is now full of all kinds of junk, pop the thing open, and calmly and serenely go, there's Bob's business card. I need that. There's those receipts that I need to give to the, either the family bookkeeper or to work or wherever. And if you are doing a project, having a budget in mind before you get started is not a bad idea.
The biggest thing.
This is a great way to keep up with that.
One of the things for me, and I learned this. I learned this a while back, because if you don't do things like this, it'll cost you money. The worst thing ever. Early on my days as being a contractor, Allan, I would go, okay, at lunch, I got to go pick up, I got to pick up 8 2x4s. I got to pick up a box of 3.5-inch screws. I got to pick up this stuff. And you leave that one item off because you just kept the shopping list in your head.
Yeah.
And you get back to the job site, and that one critical item that costs $4, you have to make a run back to the store. It's costing you money. It's annoying.
It's another lost hour.
It is, and it's like there's nothing worse than leaving out something simple. And so the older I get, I'm in the habit of taking notes. I probably would have done better in school if I would have been a better note taker. Like at the moment the math teacher's telling you something, you write it down. But that's what I do these days. And it's funny.
No, that's easy. I'll remember it. No, you won't.
You get to the end of the day, like you say, Allan, you open up the clipboard and you're like, we talked about that this morning. I totally forgot about it. And now I know to order this. Or
let me send an email. Let me send a text. Let me call somebody. Let me make sure this is done. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Allan, this is also on our, we didn't get to this last week, and it's on our Facebook page. And I was very curious about this item. If you go to our Facebook page and you scroll down about, 3 or 4 posts that we made recently, Allan, there was a hammer that I came across. I took a picture of it, and I sent you a picture. And folks, so this was really intriguing. It looks like almost like something like you would have seen in Pinocchio's workshop or whatever. And it's a thin hammer on the top, Alan. But if you can imagine, it was tilted forward.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, it's not bent. Somebody made this on purpose. And I was like, why would you want the head forward? I think I can guess, but go ahead and say, what is this hammer called, by the way? So
okay, well, it is a finishing hammer, and I find it very amusing that you said Pinocchio's workshop.
Yeah,
because that is exactly where you're going to find this hammer. It is a finishing hammer, and it is designed to be used at odd angles.
Okay,
so like you're working inside of a finished cabinet, or there's not a lot of room.
You can't take a full swing. So.
You can't get a big old whack at it. But you need to get a finishing nail or something like that embedded. So this is designed for that light tap, 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 tap to deliver the best force.
Okay. Hey, go to our Facebook page and check it out. If you've ever dealt with one of these hammers, let us know.
Tool Talk Radio on Facebook.
Okay, well, Alan, hour one of Tool Talk Radio is in the can, but this is going to be interesting. When we come back, we're going to get to our great moments in building history, talking all about the Hoover Dam.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome to Hour 2 of Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And we invite you to go to Tool Talk Radio and check out the Facebook page. Let's try this again. We invite you to go to Facebook and check out Tool Talk Radio. Check out the posts we've made. We even referenced a post we made a week or two ago, Alan, about the uniquely designed hammer that I came across. I honestly had never seen a hammer this shape before. It had sort of a tilted head forward, and you gave us kind of an update on what you use that for. And if you're just getting out of bed and you've missed any part of Tool Talk Radio, first of all, I feel sorry for you because we had a lot of fun this week.
I don't.
All right. Now. However, Alan, never fear, because if you do miss any part of Tool Talk Radio, you can catch any show, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, you have some sort of interesting stories about that, don't you? Okay.
Well, as a matter of fact, you can keep up with us at tooltalkradio.com. You can follow us on, of course, YouTube and or Spotify, so you can just take us with you.
You can binge listen to any of our past shows, right? So
unless you value your sanity.
Well, yeah, okay, actually, I've actually heard from a lot of people in the last couple of weeks that we're amusing background noise, and I went, I'll take that.
Well, I feel like if nothing else, the service we provide is we put you at least in the right frame of mind to get some home improvement done. I feel like you get up on Saturday, you throw on Tool Talk, and you're going to go, you know what? Instead of watching TV all morning, I'm going to go tackle that home improvement project and get up and, so maybe we're the motivation you need. I don't know.
If these two chuckleheads can do it,
right.
I can do it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But, Alan, you had sort of a full circle moment, and we don't want to sidetrack too much because we still have to get to our great moments in building history. But you were telling me about this off the air, and I feel like this needs to be said. You had many serendipitous occurrences just yesterday.
I had a very bizarre evening yesterday. So, we recently were at the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, and, there's a lot of people there with multicolored hair and other things. But
we attract a colorful crowd.
We attract quite the colorful crowd. And a little fender bender last night. And, it's funny the number and quality and quantity of people you meet when you block up Germantown Parkway at 5 o'clock.
Oh, so this was rush hour.
Oh, yeah.
So you got rear-ended.
Yeah. If you were, it was very funny. A friend of mine called me complaining about the traffic on Germantown, and I was kind of like, yeah, you should have seen what happened.
So you're the one, yeah.
There was a big black truck got rear-ended, and they didn't catch on. I was being oddly specific about the details of the wreck.
Well, so, nobody was badly hurt.
If you got backed up on Germantown, yeah.
Right. And your truck, I mean, compared to what happened to her car. But,
it won.
Yeah.
It won. So it was of an interesting experience, and being on the radio and doing a variety of different shows, it kept getting funnier as we're sitting there, as people began recognizing basically my voice or who I was.
Huh.
And it was pretty funny. Cause it's kind of like
that never happens to me.
It's
Allan.
like, all right, you're with the cooking school. Great. I've been looking for you. The police officer's like, your show's funny. And so even my insurance agent's listening down in Florida right now. So.
Well, I was going to say, because what you told me was the girl that rear-ended you recognized her from the Memphis Comic and Fantasy
from the
Convention.
She was wandering through.
So you get rear-ended by a girl from the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. The insurance adjuster, I'll give you this, Allan. You didn't. This guy's in Florida.
Yeah.
You made a point to plug the show.
Oh, absolutely.
And you said he's listening this morning. Did he just text
already got
you?
text. Oh yeah. So
What's his name?
David, you got your shout out. Thanks,
David,
man.
thanks for listening. And then the police. So, even in the midst of tragedy, Allan is still shilling and still
handing out cards,
promoting the show. So, that's what we try to do. Just take pain and suffering and find a way to,
and ideally your pain and suffering.
Yeah, well, yeah. So long as it's not Max's, he doesn't care.
Okay. And as we say, because you said that recently on Spotify and some other platforms, you're getting the algorithms are showing listeners in New Zealand, and we still have yet to receive that backwards flowing toilet.
Man, we need some backward flowing water from New Zealand.
So send us those pictures if you are listening in New Zealand. I mean,
yeah, pop onto us. Go to our website or catch us on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was sort of interesting, Allan. But, speaking of water flow, before we get to our great moments in building history, who really understands the nature of water?
That I have appreciated so much in the last 2 weeks.
Max, you have nothing nice to say this morning.
Hey, I like insulting you guys whenever I can.
Okay, well, good for you. Okay, well, we're talking about our good buddy Jay Hill with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. He understands how to keep water out of your home. Because that's the goal, right?
I tell you what, I will freely admit I have a J Hill roof, and I'm probably going to hug him after the last 2 weeks.
Oh man, I don't know how people live in Seattle. We've had about a week straight of rain, which big deal. I know it's a first world problem, but it's still annoying, and it really starts to play on your mood after a while. You're like, gosh.
Wet.
But there is that peace of mind because back in the day, as we said, you and I both had roofing issues. I think mine were more extreme, and every time there was rain, it was not just the annoyance of it that it's raining. It was this sort of like, oh my gosh, what is this doing to my house? Because I get leaks and everything. So, but with Jay Hill, with Big M Roofing and Remodeling, among other things, they deal with the GAF roofing systems. He's a GAF Master Elite installer, 5 stars with the Better Business Bureau and 5 stars with Good Housekeeping. Apparently, he's never gotten worse than a 5-star review. They put in roofing systems, which are important because these are designed not only to efficiently keep the water out of your home, it's also designed to last longer. I don't remember anybody talking about lifetime transferable warranties on a roof. That's awesome. Revolutionary in my opinion because because of the ridge vents, the roof runs cooler. Your home is now running cooler and more efficiently in the summer. It's breathing. It's because airflow is important. You don't want water or heat to stagnate. So he really understands that. And what is also great about Jay, in addition to his roofing and remodeling work, is the fact that he's a former insurance agent, just like your buddy David. That's and so when you have issues with your roof, if it might involve having your roof replaced or repaired by your homeowner's insurance policy, well, Jay understands that process. And I mean, the truth is you need an advocate. You don't just need somebody that's, you need somebody that understands the process that can kind of go to bat for you. And so when Jay shows up at your consultation, he understands the protocols and he will let you know if you've got a path forward. And that is a big deal because you and I, we had our roofs replaced with insurance and that saved us thousands of dollars. And the consultation is free. Jay is just a great guy to deal with, and they have a great business culture over there at Big M Roofing and Remodeling. So get in touch directly with Jay. Like I say, if you're just bored and you want a funny guy to talk to, call him directly. He won't mind. You can give him a call at 901-484-5645 or go to bigmroofingandremodeling.com. All right, Max, cue it up, buddy.
And now, great moments in building history.
This is interesting. Allan, I feel like we're, I do pride myself on being positive and optimistic and everything, but it feels like our content today, there is a lot of dark undertones and everything. And so this topic, today we're going to be talking about the Hoover Dam, which I would venture to believe everybody knows what the Hoover Dam is. They may not know all the details, but there is a really great part of this story and a kind of a darker undertone and aftermath and unintended consequences. So,
well, anytime you make big changes, stuff happens that you intended. And then stuff comes along and you go, we had no idea that was going to happen.
Can I say something right out of the gate?
Dive on.
Okay, so the Hoover Dam is it's near Las Vegas. It's in Nevada, so it's out on the west. But, Allan, it's funny, in researching it or just in all my years of talking about the Hoover Dam or whatever, I'm like, okay, what is even the point of a dam? Like, why did it occur to them to do this? Because basically by creating the Hoover Dam, they also created Lake Mead. They created they basically created a man-made lake that's like 200 miles long. But why do this? Like, it's sort of a fundamental question, but why do you make a dam?
Well, let's set the Wayback Machine a little further and jump back over to Europe.
Okay.
So you got a lot of streams, a lot of rivers, and it's the 1400s, it's the 1500s, the 1600s.
Yeah.
How do you power stuff? Water moves.
Water turbines.
Water wheels.
Water wheels,
we now have the beautiful picturesque, the cottage with the water wheel and the pond, and, that's how they ground the wheat and the flour.
So water power, yeah. Yep.
So water power was a huge thing. And electricity came along, and, water was a great way to move a turbine.
Yeah.
So it's the same basic idea as wind power.
Yeah.
Something moves the turbine moves the magnets generate the electricity flows.
Because this is also, it created a water source, and it also created a lot of electricity. It's like 4 billion kilo, whatever.
Well, damming stuff up, instantly created water.
Right.
So if you're trying to build a city, if you're trying to, humans use a lot of water for a lot of stuff.
And it's dry out there. The Southwest is very dry.
It's bone dry
water.
out there. It's pretty much desert. So welcome to, now we got to fast forward to about the late 20s. So we've got the Roaring 20s going, and at the end of the Roaring 20s, everybody in the world was making money on margin.
Oh, okay.
And, well, sooner or later, it's kind of like constantly rolling your bet over.
Right.
Sooner or later, you got to quit betting and pay the money. And a lot of people had exceeded their margins.
Right.
And now we're heading into the Great Depression.
Boom.
Part of the works program to that, President Hoover decided that one of the things they could do was put a lot of people to work, and we could build a lake. We could do this new electricity thing. And one of the projects he chose, or was chosen, was the Boulder Dam, or later called the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, because, Allan, in my notes, I thought they said they had actually been researching it like 30 or 40 years before, and then it just went on the shelf, like they never did anything. But now with the Depression, they pulled that off the shelf.
And keep in mind, 30 years of technology is a lot.
Yeah.
So,
and especially at that period in history.
So 30 years later, now we can make enough concrete.
Yeah.
30 years earlier, we had concrete factories, but they were 30 years earlier. They could only make concrete so fast. Because basically, we are talking about enough concrete to make a road, a full-size road from San Francisco to New York City, is sitting in the Hoover Dam.
Go ahead.
And Max. I might interject too. In order to if it wasn't done the way it was, and I'd like to contribute how the concrete was poured in to get it done so fast.
Yeah.
If it wasn't done that way, it would have taken 128 years to cool.
It's funny because you said it heats up, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, concrete doesn't dry. Concrete cures. It's a chemical process.
Well, didn't you say, Max, that it was built kind of like...
Yeah. I wanted to get to that. So anyways, so the way that they did it was they did it in bricks, kind of like with Lego bricks, in modular sections where it was 50 by 50 square things of pouring concrete. But not only that, but they inserted steel pipes inside and filled them with water to help them cool.
Oh, I didn't know about the filling with water part of it. That's interesting. Because it's funny that it's a chemical reaction.
Well, and it was a pressurized steel pipe so that it wouldn't crush under the weight and wouldn't leave a void in the concrete.
So, Max, you're saying that way by creating individual panels, they could dry, and then you slide them into place or something?
And then you just keep stacking it. And
That's
not only that, but you
in place.
and
they
not
were
only
actually poured like that.
And not only that, but once you were done with the water inside, you just fill it with another like cement, putty or whatever to give it extra strength.
It's so the inside, because I didn't know this stuff. I kind of let you guys do the heavy lifting on the research, but so basically it's almost like a radiator in a car. The water is circulating on the inside. Then when it's cooled, then you fill that last bit with concrete, and you got a pretty solid. And that's true because you couldn't just make the Hoover Dam and pour all that. It would never dry, right? The inside
it would never finish
it would never
curing.
cure.
As a matter of fact, it is probably still curing.
Yeah.
It can take a decent-sized concrete pour up to 50 years to actually finish the process all the way to the middle.
There must be a lot more going on than I think many of us have seen the pictures. There's there's actually a road that goes across the top of the dam. You can drive over it. I think they say 7 million people a year go over the Hoover Dam. But when you look at it, the notion that that's enough concrete to make a road from California to New York, it doesn't look possible, but there must be a lot more going on under the water and places like that, right?
Well, all right. What you see on the tourist side, you see a big wall, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this thing is as tall as a 60-story building.
That's a good
this
point.
Thing is
you don't get the scale when you just look at
tall.
it. Yeah.
Now, what you don't see is the base of this thing. Because it looks like a wall on our side, right?
Right.
It's graduated on the water side, and the base is actually almost 600 feet deep.
Wow. Yeah,
so you're
this
looking
thing
at
is
2
massive.
full football fields.
Yeah.
So when you start adding together the sheer volume of this thing, it is absolutely shocking and astounding.
That is interesting. And I think they said there was like 21,000 workers that did this, right?
But I'm gonna address the haunted Hoover Dam story.
There's a lot of legends on this.
There's a lot of legends that of building the Hoover Dam didn't exactly have OSHA oversight.
Yeah. I think OSHA came about because of things like this, right?
Well, I think the last count historically was somewhere around 96 people actually died while trying to build the Boulder Dam.
I didn't know that. Really?
Now, the legend is if you fell over while they were pouring one of those segments, they just pushed you down in it and kept going.
Oh, no, I don't believe that.
That was the legend.
Yeah,
that was the legend.
Right.
And to disprove the legend, somebody put it this way, he goes, no self-respecting concrete person would leave something organic in the concrete to weaken it.
Well, I mean, let's just,
that's just terrible. They said, you may not have liked Joe. He might have been a terrible guy, but he's not going to mess up our job. Get him out of there.
Yeah, that's silly. The notion of that, I could see where they just, it was an accident. Nobody knew they fell in, but nobody's going to do that.
There was never any point where nobody knew who fell in. This thing was covered in people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And it oddly produced a tourist industry back in 1931, long before it was finished.
Right.
Because people would just
the spectacle of watching
drive out and watch them build it.
Because there was even people that they were on the wires going down and chipping away and blowing up the part of the canyon that they needed to. It's kind of like watching acrobats, and in fact, many acrobats actually did help volunteer, and local Apaches as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
So that's interesting because they're used to scaling and rappelling and all that stuff.
Well, you and I would develop inner ear problems almost immediately. We would go into vertigo. We would have issues. Yeah. And certain indigenous populations don't have those issues.
That's right.
And other people that are trained, like a gymnast or people that are trained
they grew up
to do that
on this terrain.
Don't develop the same issues like you or I would have. So swinging around on the ropes and going up and down the side walls and everything was this was basically a never-ending circus.
I want to even mention too that one of the people who was like overseeing the Hoover Dam project was actually saved by one of these people, because the canyon from under him kind of crumbled, and then he plummeted, but one of the guys grabbed him by the foot as he was falling and saved him.
Isn't that something? So, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of, there's probably a lot of behind the scenes drama and heroics and everything that happened.
They did say that of the 96 people on the official memorial, they said these men died so that the desert might bloom.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, because, well, that was sort of, honestly, we can't cover the construction of this. There's too much. The way they dug tunnels to divert the water while they were constructing it. The way that the engineering behind this and the architecture is fascinating, and so that alone is its own deep dive. But as you said, Max, this thing also, I mean, it in order for the desert to bloom, it basically created a man-made lake, and that had all sorts. So it created Lake Mead, and that created all sorts of issues, and that one I want to unpack in a minute, because there's the good, the bad, and the ugly of Lake Mead.
Well, let's give you a scope of the size of Lake Mead.
Okay.
All right. Let's take the state of Connecticut.
Right.
And if it was hit by Lake Mead, it would be submerged by 10 feet.
Oh yeah.
The entire state of Connecticut.
I don't doubt
Lake
that.
Mead would flood it to a depth of 10 foot. That is how much water is in Lake Mead. Was.
It's 200 and something. And things happen when you divert water.
It's funny that you mentioned that. The idea of flooding and diverting water, because there was actually a town in Nevada called St. Thomas, and it was flooded by the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that when we come back, because there are always unintended consequences when you play around with Mother Nature. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio here at News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis. We'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I've been cooped up in the studio too long. I've forgotten what it's like to be outside working next to men who know what they're doing.
News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis.
Max, was that you on the job?
What, me with a squeaky voice?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, men who know what they're doing. Well, we try to,
we fake it good.
Anyway, welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And just a reminder, when you text us, you can send pictures. I don't know if you can send videos or not, but send those pictures. And Allan, today we've had a wide-ranging topic of wide-ranging discussions, but all of them have this sort of dark undertone. There's always this, this sense of okay, well, I don't want to say passive aggressive, but there's just there's a little things are twisted up a notch today. So we were talking.
If something bad happens, 3 good things come out of it.
Well,
if something good happened, maybe something weird happened as a result,
So before the break, in our Great Moments in Building History, we were talking about the construction of the Hoover Dam, which was a big project. Amazingly, as a government project, it finished ahead of schedule, which makes me think it probably finished under budget. Which, when does that ever happen in the government? So, but we invite you to go to YouTube or something, do some research on the construction, because we'd spend 4 hours talking about it. But when you construct something like a dam and you create a man-made lake, there are bound to be unintended consequences, and that's what we want to talk about in this segment, Allan. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the. So, Allan, one of the results is now that the idea was this was to create a water source, because I can tell you, when I lived in Southern California, we got our water from the Colorado River. It came all the way. So by creating Lake Mead, which was this massive body of water, it's like 200 and something miles deep. I mean, not deep, but long.
Yes.
It provides water for that southwest part of the United States. But, Allan, by creating a man-made lake in a desert climate, it created situations where today they say Lake Mead is one of the deadliest lakes in America, and there are all sorts of geological things that this created, and it's not unlike what's going on in the Bermuda Triangle. So how's that for teeing it up, Alan? So, and remember, we only have about 20 minutes. So.
Okay. So pick my favorite 3.
Yeah, don't get into one of your deep dive. But no, that does create a situation. You can't just flood an area and expect nothing's going to happen chemically or whatever. So, yeah.
All right. All right. Let's start right there with the rocks.
Okay.
Let's start with chemical reactions within the rocks. Let's start with the weight being pressed out on the environment around it.
How many trillions of tons
This is
of
just
water?
tons and tons and tons of water. We get to mention the wildlife.
Yeah, you got to. The wildlife's going to move.
Not a lake.
Yeah.
The critters from the Colorado River don't live in a lake. They live in a river.
Right.
Well, now they live in a really big lake.
Yeah.
And things that were limited in size by the fact they lived in a nice, fast-moving river, catfish are renowned for getting a little big.
Yeah, well, how big could a catfish get in a? I mean, because they said at its peak, this thing is like 500 feet deep.
Yes.
At it, so I mean, what would you do if you're a catfish and suddenly you got all the room in the world to swim
and plenty of tourists and lots of junk, and so let's add tourists now come to this area.
Yeah.
It is Lake Mead is a party lake,
right?
So you end up with part of the deadliest lake in America is human interaction.
Sure, yeah.
People want to party, people want to relax, people want to be out on the water, and that doesn't necessarily bring safety to the top of the list of things being done.
Right.
So there are accidents. The problem with this kind of lake is if something bad happens, you might not be recovered.
No, if it's 500 feet deep, I'm looking at the checklist here, Alan. One of the victims of a recent drowning. It was like triple digits. It's 100 degrees outside or something, and they're out on their boat, and they're like, I'm going to cool off and go in the water. Well, there are pockets. There may be some parts of the lake that are pretty comfortable. Then you get to other parts. It was like, I want to say the water was like 50-something degrees. Well, that's a pretty big shock to your system. This person literally locked up and almost went into hypothermia. You wouldn't think 50 degrees is enough, but that's a...
Well, it's a 50-degree shift in temperature.
Right.
That's dramatic.
Right.
All right, so here's what happens. When you get a large enough body of water, you begin to develop something called a thermocline. And anybody that's a diver out there will tell you that upper 10, 20 feet of the lake, it's warm, it's beautiful, there's sunshine on it, it's fabulous.
Right.
As you begin to dive, if you're in a lake with a hard enough thermocline, it actually looks like a layer of grease.
Oh, interesting.
And when you dive through that, you might be changing in temperature 20, 30, 40 degrees.
Right.
So as you go down. Now, when you have a lake the size of this, currents begin to develop. Hot water moves, cold water moves. You get waves. So you can get what's called an upwelling, which means water is being forced up in a certain spot. So you could have a portion of the lake 20 to 30 degrees, maybe even 50 degrees colder than a portion a quarter of the mile down from the lake.
Right.
Could this also contribute since it's deep enough to the bends?
Well, you are
you're
distinctly going below the safety about 100 feet down. When divers get below a certain level, they have to use mixes that don't involve nitrogen.
Right.
So, yes, if you are industrially working on the dam or you're doing deep water diving, it is honestly deep water diving like in the ocean.
Here's what I was thinking about, Alan, because when I was a kid, I remember, for whatever reason, we lived at a place where sometimes the streets would flood.
Right.
And there's this thing of, oh, boy, this is fun. The streets are flooded. I'm a 8-year-old kid. I'm going to go play in this. Well, don't forget, in the mix of all that water is probably sewage and everything else. It's a terrible idea to do that. Well, if you flood an area that has been it wasn't underwater until all of a sudden you flood it, you have all of these you have plants, you have wildlife, you have all of these things that are decomposing and probably creating. They say there's a toxic algae in this in this lake. There's chemical reactions that you said are doing really weird things to the water.
Well, that's a cyanobacteria or
Right.
a blue-green algae. And it doesn't just exist in Lake Mead. It exists all over the country.
Yeah.
And it is basically the source of what is called red tide. So when you have a cyanobacteria like this and it's happy, it doesn't do anything bad.
Right.
But when you upset it, water temperature changes, something shifts, it can actually turn red and releases toxins, which in an ocean environment this is like where you can't buy oysters for a couple of months of the year in certain parts of the world because they might be toxic because they were eating these bacteria, they were eating these algae.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, cyanobacteria can show up anywhere, but yes, it has been found in Lake Mead. Other things that happen is, now you mentioned the decaying things.
Right.
Now, as stuff sinks to the bottom, and you alluded to the Bermuda Triangle.
That's what I was interested in.
Also known as the Sargasso Sea, also known as that spot in the ocean where there's not necessarily as much action as there is surrounding it.
Can I just say something?
Dive in.
This is the part that excited me about talking about the Hoover Dam years ago, Allan. And I hate to admit it, but I do learn a lot on your segments, Allan, because especially in the science. Years ago on Tool Talk, you talked about the Bermuda Triangle, where people have this notion that there's some curse or there's some paranormal things happening, and you're always quick to point out there's a lot of scientific reasons why a boat would sink or why a plane's why their
stuff can
panels
go wrong,
go wrong and stuff. And so basically one thing you talked about, which made a lot of sense to me, is you said there are certain parts of the Bermuda Triangle where a boat might be going through, and for lack of a better term, the water becomes more aerated, almost like a soft drink.
Yes.
Effervescent, and a boat is not going to float on that because and that can cause it to sink, and that's caused by what's going on way under the water, kind of making this effervescent thing. And in Lake Mead, there are pockets like this, right? And
right.
That's
Welcome
probably
to
why
swamp
boats
gas.
are sinking and
right.
stuff.
Welcome to swamp gas. Welcome to methane.
Right.
Methane is a naturally produced gas by the decomposition of organic material. And under such dramatic pressures, so all of the stuff living in the lake, all of the algae, all of the fish, all of the protozoans, all that stuff, when they die, I know we see dead fish floated up on the shore, but fundamentally, most of the things that pass away in a lake sink to the bottom and become the sediment.
Right.
But that is continuing bacterial activity. So underneath that sediment, you can get pockets of methane gas built up. And when they build up to a certain point, they erupt up out of the sediment. They come bubbling to the surface. Methane is also highly flammable.
Oh, yeah.
Which is where we get... we get legends of swamp gas and what was it? The Princess Bride, the fire swamp.
Oh, yeah.
Where burst of flame.
How about
can come
lizard
up out of
people?
that. We haven't got to lizard people. Those are at the airport. They're not in the lake.
They're the ones who designed the dam.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I mean, this is did the engineers take this stuff into account? Because I mean, we're talking almost 100 years ago, right, Allan? So was this kind of thinking part of the plan? Because I don't know if they knew this.
Well, this is why in a lot of parts of the country and all over Europe, we are undamming a lot of things.
Oh, interesting.
We're tearing down the dams from 100 years ago because it stopped the fish from moving. It stopped stuff from going like it's supposed to.
I thought there were even dams that date all the way back to ancient Rome.
Occasionally, all over Europe, not over here, not that we know of.
That's what I meant, like with regards to like the undamming projects.
Right. And what we've discovered is that when you dammed up the river, then the salmon couldn't come up it.
Right.
Or
well,
the,
yeah, that's true.
it stopped. It stopped.
The salmon
certain
aren't
things.
meant to swim in a lake. They're a river.
Well, they don't mind swimming in a lake, but they can't jump 60-story dams to get there. So they don't mind going through the lake, but they can't. They can't climb this thing.
Right.
So a lot of these. Now, the other part of this is that entire towns have been washed away when an old dam has failed. Because of the
that's a good
sheer
point if you're living
volume.
downriver.
Right.
Gee whiz.
Because water is where people like to live. So a controlled release or a controlled failure where we keep letting the pressure off of an old dam is much, much preferred to whoops, it broke.
Right.
And here we go.
Yeah, that's a good
now,
point.
we're not in any danger. Before everybody reads something into that, we're in no danger of that with the Hoover Dam. But we are talking about the great drought right now, where so much of the water level has come down that they have found, I believe, a couple of confirmed mafia hit victims in barrels.
They said that's where
Somebody
they would
sunk
throw their
somebody.
Yeah.
And
Because it's right by Las Vegas.
We've found boats that have been lost for decades, and
Right.
we've found all kinds of, interesting artifacts as the water levels have come down. But, now it's the rainy season, so water levels are starting to refill. Snowpacks are starting to fill back up in the mountains. As we've been overly blessed here in the Mid-South, we're not
because our river was dry too. I mean, they said Lake Mead was at record lows, just like the Mississippi. So
and everything's filling back up. But keep in mind the stress, because now I'm going to address another little conspiracy theory that can happen, and I'm going to give you a connection to Loch Ness.
Oh, let's hear it.
Okay, with all of the water, you have a massive amount of compression, and we all and this is one of these little known facts. Our modern world exists because of quartz crystals.
Okay.
If you take a quartz crystal and you put it under pressure, it is going to vibrate at a set frequency. This gave us the original radio, which is why it was called a crystal set.
Right.
And this fact is crucial to almost all of our electronics today.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we've discussed that.
So, but now we just took all of this area out there and we added millions and millions of tons of pressure to the rocks. And they do contain quartz deposits. So now they're under pressure of millions and millions of tons. And there are theories that this sets up vibrations or harmonics that can affect things like navigation.
Oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
welcome to all the weird conspiracy theories, and because of the quartz content around Loch Ness, this is why it's been so difficult to map the loch with older technologies.
Sure.
Now
Yeah.
with LiDARs and new stuff that gets away from the harmonics of this, lasers are a whole new ballgame. So there's no telling what all we could learn. But when you do build something like this, water will find places to get around. It'll leak in. It'll work its way into the areas around it.
Yeah.
So the area around the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead has forever been altered.
Oh yeah. Even if they do decide to drain some of it or something.
Well, at
So
some
it's like,
point,
yeah.
you can't keep repairing this dam forever.
Right.
And think about it. That was in the 30s.
Well,
This dam is 90 plus years old.
Well, and it's also a good reason to always be looking for new technologies because, I mean, at the moment, they supply a lot of the water that you need out in the Southwest.
And a lot of the electricity.
So, I don't know. There's no doubting that the building of the Hoover Dam was a great moment in building history, but it's also, as we said,
it's got a few issues.
It's got issues, and like everything else. So, but I would highly encourage you to go do some research on YouTube or something. It's really fascinating. I mean, countless hours of fun.
And it shows the amazing strength that goes into building the Hoover Dam with concrete and rebar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because basically, at the end of the day, this is a concrete structure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, Allan, I don't. I thought that was a pretty interesting discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I want to get to a story not a story. I want to get to a home improvement tip that I feel is crucial involving our toilets, because I think you left out a key component in your discussion a few weeks ago. Before we get to that, though, Allan, I want to. Speaking of toilets, what's going on with Dark Oak Media this week?
Boom. There you go. He got jokes today.
There we go.
All
Now,
righty.
what's going on, man? We didn't get a chance to talk about it last
Dark
week.
Oak Media, well, we're having a lot of fun. We just did our holiday editions of Let Me Ask You This, and it came from the international market. So if you want to see how much bizarre chocolate they can eat,
Oh yeah.
by all means, tune in, check out. It came from the international market. I've got a lot of new stuff. As a matter of fact, we'll be working on a new studio today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So darkoakmedia.com. Go check out the shows. Pop over to Roku TV with Geeky Side TV, and you can follow along on television around the world.
Yeah. Check out the media check out the content that Allan creates. And
I don't know if you want to see that.
Yeah. No,
you do.
Enter
You
at
do.
your own risk. So
Subscribe and like, because I'm old and I need the money.
Absolutely. All right, Allan, just real quick what I'm up to. Nothing as earth-shattering as you, but, I deal with wood. Carpentry is my game. I love outside projects, although I'm not opposed to inside projects. I've actually been working inside for the last 2 months on a remodeling job. But anyway, if you need anything made of wood for the outside of your home, like a deck or a pergola or a boat dock, funny thing, I just visited a couple of those docks that I built a couple years ago. But anything for the outside of your home made of wood, I love those projects. So get in touch with me. You can call me directly at 901-921-7105. And you can also check out some of my work at thorshomes.com. All right, Allan, this is something I feel like we skirt the edges of this conversation. We've given specific, we've given some instruction on this, but sometimes there's things that are right out in front of you. They're very basic, and yet we don't really give the crucial information. And I'm talking about toilet clogs.
Oh,
I'm talking about how to avoid, a toilet clog can either be a minor annoyance, or if you do it incorrectly, or if you don't know how to deal with it, it can literally be a tragic event. It can be a huge mess. I point
thousands and thousands of dollars in home repair.
I point to a friend of mine. I just happened to be at his house, and he had a toilet that was clogged up, and it's like, okay, whatever. Well, he's sitting there dealing with the clog, and suddenly water. For folks that don't know, there's a tank on the top of your toilet.
Yes,
there is a flap that goes, that keeps the water from going in, and then there is water that comes into the toilet and fills it up. Well, apparently, somehow that flap came open, and it was flooding his bathroom. And he screamed, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And I ran in. The first thing I did is I cut the water off, and I closed that flap. Well, apparently, he had been plunging so much that the pressure had nowhere else to go, and it lifted the flap, activated the water, and there was gallons of water on this floor.
Yes.
Filthy, disgusting water. And this was completely avoidable. And I feel like we should at least give a nice systematic way of and everybody in the house needs to know how to do this, because it's not rocket science, but avoiding tragedy. So let's talk about that, Allan, like the correct way to deal with this situation.
Well, let's go with the OSHA school of always control unintended energy. What do we mean by that?
I like that. That's good.
Unintended energy is anything that can be stored. So if it's spring-loaded, undo the spring. If it's plugged in, unplug it. In the case of a toilet, turn off the water.
Right.
Now, if you are looking at this, now, basically the parts of the toilet we have to be aware of is, of course, the drain flap. You also have a fluid master, the thing that brings the water into the toilet.
Which you can turn off immediately by just grabbing it.
Right. You can just, honestly, you can just grab that little handle to lift straight up, and it will, and the water will shut off if the fluid master is good.
Right.
If the fluid master is bad, we got a different problem. But let's address the actual clog itself. The clog itself in your toilet is within 12 inches of the surface of the water.
Right.
Because if you look at the side of your toilet, the toilet goes down, comes back up, makes a turn, and goes down.
Right.
And that turn is there to keep your house from blowing up.
Right. And the smell, just the unpleasant smells from the sewer.
Well, we talked about methane a minute ago. Guess what's going underneath your house?
Right.
Methane gas. So this little curve, and that is your culprit where things are going to get gummed up.
Well, now, I want to say one thing, Allan. So basically, his problem, this was a bad clog. This water was not, after plunging for 5 minutes, this water was not budging. But so what I want to say is you may have, I would say in this situation, you should always have a good plunger, but you should always also have some good hardy rubber gloves, because this may involve, honestly, I know people are eating breakfast now. In a worst case scenario, what you want to do, turn the water off, get the water controlled, out. Turn the water out. And when I say that, folks, go at the bottom of your toilet, you're going to notice a water valve. Just turn it to the right. don't crank it so hard that it actually can snap. Those things can snap. Turn it off.
Turn it off.
Get a 5-gallon bucket if it comes to it, and a cup that you don't care about anymore.
You
and you may
never
have
wanna
to
see
drain.
again.
You may have to actually scoop some of that water out, put it in the bucket.
Right.
Get the water down to a usable level, and then start plunging. And you may have to get the snake thing and all that. But the main thing is to keep the water from turning on and coming back in.
The biggest thing is if you have a really, really bad clog, a full soft clog, you may have to get an auger.
Yeah.
Or a drain snake. And again, you don't have to buy a 50-foot snake. My favorite auger in the whole world is a commercial 6-foot auger that you put down in there, you crank the handle, and whatever is in that bend, and for the next foot or two down into the pipe, it's going to clear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that will clear it. And if you've got a house full of teenage young ladies that have lots of hair,
oh, yeah,
I promise you, your big box store will be happy to sell you one for about $49, and it will be a great investment until your pipes are clear.
Yeah. So when you're done listening to Tool Talk Radio today, get your family, have a nice family meeting, go into the bathroom, and educate them on how to deal with a toilet. This is where you turn it off. This is the flap that.
And this is why we don't put half a roll of toilet paper down it at a time.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this was important information. Sometimes it's the fundamental stuff. It's the nuts and bolts, and
well, it's just that the toilet is that thing that brings terror when that water starts getting close to the lip,
and it's avoidable tragedy. So anyway, well, we hope you avoided tragedy today by listening to Tool Talk Radio. You know, I like to think you have. But anyway, it's time to get out of here. We're out of time, but we will be here next week. So on behalf of my buddy Allan Gilbert and our pal Max over there behind the glass, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.